I be like, sheesh, sunset on the beach. Make me wanna pull up on Miami with the heat. I don't know about you.
All right, welcome back to the Anytime Sports Podcast Show. We got a very eventful week of football coaching and a very eventful week of some unexpected, possibly, conference championship matchups. Let's just jump right into coaching. The most recent coaching information is the 49ers bringing back Robert Saleh. We'll get into the Cowboys in a second. The 49ers bringing back Robert Saleh as defensive coordinator. There's a lot of head coaching jobs out there, too. I just want to jump into this one. This is the first one that popped out at me. I really like this pick for the Niners because Saleh was a great defense coordinator back in the day. I mean, obviously, the Jets didn't like him as a head coach. I thought he was a decent head coach, but they didn't really do anything with that. They hired him as a defensive coordinator. What do you think about that? Does that boost the Niners' chances next year? Was there more that they need to do?
It just improves it defensively. I think bringing a guy back defensively, like a defensive mind like Robert Saleh, definitely will help the defense this year. And especially the Niners just had a bunch of injuries this year. I don't think it elevates them to a Super Bowl contender as much as if they just stick with their defensive coordinator. But, Robert Saleh is a very good defensive-minded coach, and I think he'll do well.
Yeah, I agree. Like I mentioned earlier, I want to jump into the Cowboys news. They did hire a head coach last night. This is fresh off the press. They hired Brian Schottenheimer. He was their offensive coordinator. They just promoted him. This is a very polarizing hire, I feel, from a lot of standpoints. Jerry obviously trusted his guy. He didn't want a guy like Joe Brady. He didn't want to go out and get a guy.
Reports were coming out that it was not Jerry who hired him. It was his sons convincing him to hire Brian Schottenheimer. Well, say what you want. He's got a coaching history that's pretty robust. Sorry. Got a coaching history that's pretty robust, but he did not call plays last year, and he's just given the position. This just seems like the worst head coaching hire, and we're just seeing the Cowboys just go down. Like they're not what they used to be.
Yeah,
they're not what they used to be, and they're just making boneheaded decisions.
Yeah,
they're probably the most laughable team in the NFL right now.
Yeah, you very rarely see teams promoting offensive coordinators inside the organization for that head coaching spot permanently. Normally that's just the interim head coach and then they move on. And with the amount of options out there this offseason for head coaching options, it's very surprising to me that they did hire Schottenheimer as their head coach. I mean, you had a chance to try and persuade Dion to come to the NFL. You had a chance to try and persuade Saleh to be your head coach. You had a chance to get all these guys that are out there still, and then you go with this guy. So
they were so late into the game getting a head coach, firing Mike McCarthy was so late in the process that you really did yourselves no favor, and you did no favor to Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy might be out of a job even after leading the Cowboys to 2 over 10-win seasons and then having one bad season this past season because of injuries.
Yeah.
Especially to Dak Prescott. But it just seems like a terrible hire to me. I think Jerry is regretting offering the contract to Dak, and he wasn't going to get a guy like Dion because Dion is not a pushover. Dion's going to want what Dion wants. And, if you're a head coach for Jerry's team, Jerry's this end-all, say-all. He is the GM. He is the de facto head coach almost.
Yeah.
But, that was never going to work out. In my opinion, it might have, if they drafted his son, he might have had more say, but there's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Cowboys are just an absolute laughingstock. I mean, you could also say the same thing about the Jacksonville Jaguars, who hired Liam Cohen to be their head coach. Well, they fired their GM right after Ben Johnson got hired to the Bears. We'll talk about that hire later. But they fired their GM. Ben Johnson was not considering Jacksonville because of the GM was still there. Then they fire him, and then they reach out to Liam Cohen, who did not want to be there. If that GM was going to be there, and they're like, "Oh, come back. We want to hire you as a head coach." He was in Tampa Bay, going to sign a contract to be the offensive coordinator, and then all of a sudden, Jacksonville calls him like, "Hold on, get in the building," and Tampa Bay couldn't
Yeah.
reach Lincoln to hire him as their offensive coordinator. So he was blowing off his old team as well. This was a very weird situation, especially when I saw an interview with Shad Khan and the GM at the time. Um, that just a week before he was fired, he on the interview with the GM, he's like, "Oh well, I don't know if his job is safe." That is
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous to say that while you're on an interview.
Yeah.
This guy thinks his job's safe, and you're like, "Yeah, I don't think he'll be back." Like that's outrageous.
Yeah, and
I mean, there's no other way to say it.
yeah, they're also another laughing stock organization because you have talent. You have Trevor Lawrence. You have Brian Thomas, who's balled out as a rookie. You have all this talent. You have Josh Allen Hines. You have all these guys on defense and offense to be a solid team. It's just a constant circle of coaching, and this is such a laughing stock because another thing that the Jags did is they were about to hire Saleh. Saleh was in Jacksonville, and while he was in Jacksonville, he took the 49ers job. So a whole lot going on there, whole lot in that organization that needs to be addressed. And another hire that's interesting and can go both ways. The Raiders hiring Pete Carroll. This is, at least in my mind, because there's a few things that are running through my mind. You're in a division. You have to play Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers, who made it to the playoffs with nobody's on their team. And they're such a young team. You have the Chiefs, who always find a way to win. And you have the Broncos, who are a super young team coached by one of the best coaches in NFL history. And then you have Pete Carroll. He's also one of the great coaches in NFL history. But the thing is, you're in a team with a bunch of nobodies. Because who's your quarterback? You're going to have to draft him. He's not going to – expectations for rookies are through the roof, but realistically that's not going to happen rookie year. You build around Brock Bowers. You keep Crosby or you trade Crosby. And then you have to build an entire team around him. But I would argue Pete Carroll is the guy to do this. He's built up a Seattle team to go to a Super Bowl. Although there are younger guys, my problem is Pete Carroll is 73. You're gonna be 2 years rebuilding. He's gonna be 75. You're gonna be ready to contend. He's gonna be 76. And by the time you do a couple of years of contending, maybe make a deep playoff run, he's gonna be close to 80 years old. Oldest coach in NFL history just got hired at a job. So, what are your thoughts on Pete Carroll?
Yeah, it's not going to work out how they think it is. I mean, he's 73 right now. You mentioned oldest coach in the NFL right now actively. It'll be interesting to see the Harbaugh-Pete Carroll rivalry come back to the NFL. That has not been there since Harbaugh was at the 49ers. I mean, so they're back to being rivals again. Those two don't like each other, so that's a very interesting take on the situation. I wish the best for Pete Carroll, but I really think the Seahawks were moving on at the right time by hiring their new head coach last season and letting Pete Carroll go. They're like, you're almost done, and we don't want to abruptly change. We like this guy. We're going to hire this guy. Pete Carroll, of course, loves coaching. What's a coach? Always a coach. But I worry about him, his age, and his health and his longevity he could have with the organization. You don't want to be 2 years into the rebuild and all of a sudden for health issues, Pete Carroll has to step down.
Yeah.
And then you don't have anyone to fill his spot when you're ready to maybe contend or maybe rebuild the roster even more instead then in the middle of your rebuilding years, you're going to a catastrophic failure again back to ground zero, which would not be good for the Raiders. You would have to think that Tom Brady had a say in the head coach he wanted.
Yeah.
And because as a partial owner of the Raiders, I feel like they communicated well. And I feel like you like Pete Carroll. I mean, they wanted Ben Johnson. I think they wanted Ben Johnson as the first option. But Pete Carroll's a good secondary plan. I'm surprised it wasn't Mike McCarthy. I think Mike McCarthy's a little younger, and I think he could get at least a couple good seasons out out of the Raiders. But, it's Pete Carroll, so sorry, my dog
Scooby.
squeaked. All right,
Yeah, like you were saying, it is Pete Carroll, and at the end of the day, he is old. I want to move to a different team that hired a coach. The New York Jets hired Aaron Glenn. This was a day after the Bears hired their head. Yeah, the day after the Bears hired Ben Johnson, and the Lions are left with a bunch of vacancies now. The Jets, I think this is the right hire. This is where Aaron Glenn wanted to go. This is who the Jets wanted to get. But the thing, if you're the Jets, you just hired back-to-back defensive coordinator head coaches. But they also extended Aaron Glenn for, I think, 5 years or something. They gave him a big contract right away, too. What are your thoughts on this hire?
I'm going to have to fully disagree with what you're saying. I think it's one of the worst hires of this hiring cycle. Not because Aaron Glenn is very talented on the defensive side of the ball. He is. But we've seen this story before. The Jets organization is not some guy where you could plug in a coordinator and it would work. Some said the same thing about Ben Johnson with Chicago. We'll get to it when we come to the Bears. But Aaron Glenn, in that media market, that's a big market right there. They haven't won in a long time. You needed somebody who was going to bring a culture shift because it seems like losing there is just a part of the culture. You need to have a good plan to bring the culture shift. Hopefully Aaron Glenn could do that. He saw Dan Campbell do it in the Lions, turning that organization around. So I think there's a thought process behind it. Aaron Glenn being a part of the Jets organization, so he has history being a Jet. Maybe he can instill a culture. But you see most of the good head coaches nowadays are offensive-minded coaches. Will that change in the future? It probably will. I'm not so confident. I'm confident in Aaron Glenn's ability, but I'm not confident in the location that he landed. I think the Jets is a very hard location. I think somebody like Rex Ryan, Pete Carroll, or even Mike McCarthy would have been a better option than Aaron Glenn. And once again, it's not because Aaron Glenn's not talented. Aaron Glenn is one of the best defensive coordinators in the league right now. I wouldn't say he's the best. I'd say Vic Fangio is the best defensive coordinator in the league. And really surprised he's not getting at least a couple options. I mean, he had his opportunity in Denver, and it didn't really go well. But I think you need to give him another chance.
Yeah, I would agree with what you were saying. I could see what you're saying as well. Especially with an organization where you're going to have a lot of constant cycles of potentially in the next couple of years, because who knows if Aaron Rodgers is coming back. Devontae's not going to come back unless Aaron Rodgers wants him to come back. You have Garrett Wilson, who's going to be good. You have Sauce Gardner. So you have these young – and Breece Hall. You have these young pieces. You just have the right guy to build around them.
They're coming up on expiring deals, and you got to convince the guys, hey, you want to stay in New York. We're building something good, which you have not done a good opportunity at doing that, especially with the inconsistency at coaching, inconsistency at quarterback play, inconsistency with everything. You had the defense right with Robert Saleh, but you couldn't get that offense going. Mostly because their former offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, was a terrible offensive coordinator before they shift halfway through the season, and you saw a little bit of improvement, but the structure around the team was not there because you were having an interim head coach who'd never been a head coach before. I think if you kept with Robert Saleh, it would have been better, but hey, there's a lot of things in the Jets organization that doesn't make sense, except same thing with the Bears as well. I wish the Jets well, but I mean, I don't really see this hiring being the best hire possible.
Yeah, I agree there. And then speaking of the Bears, let's turn to the Bears. Bears hire Ben Johnson, arguably the top candidate out there for head coaching. We were saying before the podcast that Harbaugh would have been the best move last offseason, but there's not much you could do now because he's a Charger. But I think Ben Johnson is arguably the best hire they could have made. From clips I've seen already, it seems like he's ready to change the Bears around. He's ready to build a culture. He got a young team. Bears was probably the most sought-after coaching position on the market because you have such a young team. You have such a big market. Caleb's got so much talent. You got DJ, you got DeAndre, you got Montez Sweat, Brisker, Gordon, all these young guys that have so much talent. And then you hire Ben Johnson. You just got to hope all cylinders click because he obviously was with Detroit for a while, and hopefully he develops some of that culture with Dan Campbell. But like we were saying with Aaron Glenn, that's the one thing I'm worried about is that he can't bring that culture. But I'm hoping with everything in my body that he does, and he's the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of different thoughts on Ben Johnson and on this hire and the way it was done. I watched all the introductory press conferences with the talks with um, the McCaskies, talks with Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles, and of course Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson as well. I watched all those press conferences. Reports were coming out that George McCaskey was very uncomfortable signing the contract that Ben Johnson demanded. And when asked during his press conference, somebody asked the question, it's not always the Bears get the best hire decision. What was different about this time around? And he was like, well, I disagree with the premise of the question. We always felt like we've hired the best guy or whatever. He said along the lines of that. And it's like, drop your ego.
Yeah.
You have not had a winning team or a Super Bowl contending team ever since you've taken over, really.
Yeah.
They've had one team go to the Super Bowl since they've really de facto taken over. It's ridiculous. Check your ego at the door. Get ready to spend some money because they have the money.
Yeah.
They just don't want to spend the money. And I was worried about the structure in Chicago. Ben Johnson cleared that up and said he liked the structure in Chicago. That's why he went to Chicago. So that clears up a little bit behind the scenes of that going on because there was reports he might not come here because of the structure. I think it's so much for him to do as a first-time head coach, though, in a market that has not won a Super Bowl since 1985.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. If he gets off to a good start, it will be good. If he doesn't, it's going to be a long season. It's going to be a long coaching carousel, to be honest. But I'll turn it over to you. I got to let my dog out for one. I'll let you continue more on your thoughts about Ben Johnson, and then I'll be right back. But that's what I think. I think it might overwhelm him too much in the beginning. Hopefully he gets off to a good start.
Yeah, I was going to say Ben Johnson is going to have a lot of pressure on him, especially in a market where Bears fans are. So, like, oh, we need to win. If you're not going to win in your first season, you're not going to get above 500, you're not going to get a good record in your first season, it's over, and you're not going to be the guy for the future. Obviously, Ben Johnson is a better guy than Eberflus. He has more experience as an offensive coordinator. The last offensive coordinator-minded head coach we had was Matt Nagy, and he led the Bears to that great 2018 season that ended in such heartbreak. But the thing I think that Ben Johnson could bring is he's younger than Nagy. He comes from a better team. Nagy did come from the Chiefs, but I think Ben Johnson has that culture swing and everything that the Bears fans really want. We just got to see what kind of coaching staff he brings in, because so far he has made some good hires. I'll list them off here in a second. And then, he did just hire Al Harris, who is the defensive pass game coordinator. He was from the Cowboys. He worked with Branch and Diggs, so I like that. Bears have a great defense. Keep that rolling. And yeah, I was just saying that they hire. What do you think of Bears hiring Al Harris as their defensive pass coordinator or defensive pass game coordinator? I want to see Ben Johnson bring in some big guys for obviously offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. But he's probably trying to figure out who wants to go where.
Yeah, I mean, you go through this whole cycle. Every single year, there seems to be more and more coaching jobs open, and all those coaching jobs, they need to bring in their own staff. So sometimes you don't get the first pick. And the best thing that the Patriots did was hire Mike Vrabel early, so he could really handpick his staff because he was the first coach. And of course, you'd want to go to a coach like Mike Vrabel, to coach. And to mention him, he's the last head coach we have to mention, right?
Yeah.
So Mike Vrabel gets hired as the Patriots head coach. Are we going to see another dynasty where they win 4 to 5 Super Bowls?
I think if you're going to build it, obviously Drake May is going to be that quarterback. You have a lot of pieces to go on that team. They got a decent offense, but you got to build that team a lot more to be contending because they were pretty awful during the season. But like you were saying, Mike Vrabel is that guy to turn the team around. And if it's
He's a no shit attitude guy.
Yeah.
He's hard nosed. He does not care about your feelings. He is gonna get you on the right track. He was there when they won a lot.
Yeah.
He could instill that culture and that accountability.
Yeah, he's
that
yeah.
that teams often lack. Some talented teams often lack. And I think there'll be a way more hard-working group and a better – they have a quarterback too, so it's like completely – it's way better than a situation he ever had in Tennessee because they never had a great quarterback. They had Tannehill as a serviceable quarterback. They went to the AFC Championship game with Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
The one thing you need now is a running back. You need some offensive linemen. And, of course, we'll probably get Buzz on and we'll talk – we'll do a deep dive into some teams, and we'll bring on some special guests who are fans of the team to give their thoughts.
Yeah, that'll be good
As well. We'll have Buzz. I have one of my friends who'd like to come on. He's a Cincinnati fan, so
that'd be good.
If you're listening to this,
I was saying that'd be good. The good off-season content.
Good off-season content in that aspect. We'll end up doing that. I think that'd be a fun thing to do. But let's we talked about Mike Vrabel. Why don't we go into let's preview these championship games. So I know we haven't done a breakdown in a while. Divisional round was Chiefs beating Texans, Bills beating the Ravens, Commanders beating the Lions, and the Eagles beating the Rams. Let's just pick the championship game. Let's start off with the NFC this time. The Eagles host the Washington Commanders, and this one will be on January 26th at 2 p.m. So it'll be a midday game. Let's check the weather. Let's see what the weather's going to be like. Of course, it's probably going to be really cold, but both these teams are used to playing in the cold as well, so I don't think that should be a problem.
40 degrees at game time. It's very unfortunate, obviously, because we're probably going to get an Eagles-Chiefs Super Bowl again for the second time in 3 years. Nobody wants to watch that. Everyone wanted to see the Lions. Everyone wants to see the Bills. We still have a chance to see the Bills. But the Commanders did upset the Lions this past week. I want to kind of touch on the Commanders' kind of run real quick because this is insane. Jaden Daniels as a rookie. With this team they had, the team that Dan Quinn has built to go to the championship in his first year there, and Jaden Daniels' first year as a quarterback, you have some older assets on that team. But that's perfect for building it because they might have a couple more years left, but they still could build that culture for the team and for these younger guys. But the Commanders did take down the Lions last week. The Lions also were banged up and had a lot of injuries, but no excuses on that. But the Commanders now going into a division rival in the Eagles, one of probably their toughest game of the entire year, for the championship, for the chance to go to the Super Bowl. That would be insane if the Commanders made it to the Super Bowl, but they do have a tough task ahead of them.
Yeah, they do have a tough task, and I think people are overestimating this team because of how good Jaden Daniels has performed. I think he is the single-handedly best rookie quarterback we have ever seen. Ever. No rookie quarterback led their team to an NFC championship game. We're talking about a team that not as talented on paper. They have Terry McLaurin, but we saw De'Ami Brown last week. He went off and had a good game in their divisional round game. They put up 45 points on this Detroit Lions defense. Of course, injured. Still, Jaden Daniels is an absurdly good talent. Like one of the best. He is single-handedly the best quarterback from this draft class. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. As of right now, if you had to draw the line, Jaden Daniels is at 1.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels is at 1. So don't give that wrong. But I think they're overestimating Jaden Daniels. That offensive line is banged up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to go well as people think so. A lot of money is on Commanders, but it's like I don't see it. I don't see it happening. I think people are overestimating the Commanders, and I think the Eagles, especially with Saquon Barkley, is a game changer. Saquon Barkley could change the Super Bowl prediction because if they had Saquon Barkley last year, man, could they have won a Super Bowl over the Chiefs? Probably.
Yeah.
And what Saquon Barkley has done against the number 2 rush defense in Baltimore and the number 1 rush defense against Denver.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Like
Wait,
this,
did they play Denver?
yeah, this past week Saquon had
Denver
two breakaway rushing touchdowns, and then like saw the week before he could have had one too. But yeah, like you were saying, Saquon is a game changer, and especially with the stats he's put up this year, I don't think that the Commanders are going to be able to stop him, and that's going to be the biggest threat. And then if you do have to stop him, then A.J. Brown's open. He's had terrible stats these past couple of weeks, but he's still a playmaker.
Okay. Score predictions.
I'm going to predict Eagles 28, Commanders 17. I think it's going to be the Eagles game, but I think the Commanders are going to put up some late points, but not enough.
Eagles 31, Commanders 23.
Okay. We both have them kind of getting clobbered.
Weird.
But it'll be interesting, especially with it being interdivisional. And anything can happen in interdivisional games. Earlier in the season when the Commanders played the Eagles, they did win. They won 36-33 towards the end of the season, and then they lost a couple weeks before that, 26-18. So they split. They've split games during the season. This report just came out earlier today about the Commanders, and former owner Dan Schneider says he hates the Commanders' success, and that's a guy that Washington fans are gonna be mad about forever because they were terrible.
Yeah, you're gonna hate the Commanders' success. You sold the team, and you never had a winning season or any of that team. Really, you never had a good shot at winning a Super Bowl. And of course, when stable owners come around and they instill a new culture and a culture change, of course you're gonna have success.
Yeah. And it's funny seeing a guy talk about his former team like that when they're just winning, because obviously you were the problem. But this will be an interesting game. This is, yeah, like you said, this is the first game in the tomorrow's slot at Sunday games. Yeah, this one is at 2. It'll be an interesting game to see, and especially to see what they do in the offseason to push towards next year, because they got a bunch of pieces to build around, but they just got to build it right, and I think they could. And they could be contender here in a couple years, but if they make it to the Super Bowl this year, it's going to be a rough go-ahead against the Chiefs or the Bills.
Let's go to the AFC Championship game. We have the Chiefs against the Buffalo Bills in the much-awaited rematch from a couple years ago, where a coin flip decided the AFC Championship game. This will be a sold-out crowd. Game time, it should be around 32 degrees. It's going to be cold. But both these teams used to the cold. Josh Allen having an MVP type year. He might not get the MVP because there's a person called Lamar Jackson that's pretty dang good as well. But Josh Allen ended up beating Lamar Jackson last week. Is this Bills team going to finally beat the Kansas City Chiefs and make it to the Super Bowl?
I think if they're going to do it, they've lost the last 3 years against them. If they're going to do it, this is going to be their year to do it. They beat them 30-21 during the season. Gave the Chiefs their only real loss, because their last loss was obviously when they rested all their starters. But I think that Buffalo is going to get it done this year. They've gone through it 3 years in a row. But I think seeing this team this year, Josh Allen is clicking on all cylinders. They got James Cook. Khalil Shakir is insane for a rookie. And they're just cooking through, and I think. Oh no, he's not a rookie. But
do you want to hear an interesting stat?
Yeah.
So you've mentioned Mahomes, and my dog is going crazy. We'll give him 1 second, and I'll say the stat, and then I'll let you think about it. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in head-to-head against each other are even.
Mm-hmm.
They are 4-4 apiece. Now Josh Allen's 0-3 in the playoffs. Mahomes is 3-0 in the playoffs, regular season. Josh Allen's 4-1, and Mahomes is 1-4 against the Bills in the regular season. So it's basically, can Josh Allen do it when it comes playoff time?
Yeah.
We don't know exactly if he can, and I don't know. I'll let you.
Yeah. If it's gonna be his year to do it, this is gonna be it because he's gotta contend while they can. Because the Chiefs, obviously, they're winning, but it's not gonna get any easier. They're always gonna be winning, at least as long as Mahomes is there. And the Bills are actually favored in this 54% to 45%, and I would argue the Bills have more momentum going into this game. They did just come off of a big win over Baltimore, 27-25. That was a close game. They demolished Denver in the first round, and then they were riding like a big win streak during the season, beating up, including in that stretch. They beat Miami Dolphins, who were contending at that point. They beat Kansas City, and they beat Detroit in a big win game. But the only thing that worries me about this Buffalo team is the amount of points they've let up. Recently they let up 25 points against Baltimore. They're also a great offense. Don't get me wrong. Denver, they only let up 7 points, which is great. But when you played Lions a couple weeks ago, you let up 42 points. The week before that, 42 points against the Rams. And then you let up 21 points against New England. They let up a lot of points recently, but I think they can get it done, and in the right time. I think this will be their year to get it done.
So you're taking the Bills.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bills.
I'm going to take something that hasn't failed me the past 2 seasons. 7 straight AFC Championship appearances for the Kansas City Chiefs. Hard to go against them. You could say they got a weak run defense. Buffalo's got a good run offense, and they might run the ball. But you have one of the best generational talents in Patrick Mahomes. And you have one of the best coaches of all time in Andy Reid. You make those two, they're pretty much unstoppable. It's going to take an absolutely flawless game and coaching effort from the Bills to win this game. It's very hard to win at Arrowhead, especially in the playoffs. It is really hard. They like to yell and scream. And I mean, it's a nice atmosphere. With that being said, I am taking the Chiefs. So I am taking the Chiefs. My score predictions will be 30. What do I want? 38? No. 41-38.
I think I didn't put my score prediction. I think it's going to be 28-21 Bills, or it could be something like 24-28, something along those lines. I don't know. I'm probably just biased because I don't want the Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl again. But
so your Super Bowl is a Buffalo Bills Eagles championship. Yeah. My Super Bowl is a Kansas City Eagles championship.
Yeah, and even though a lot of people may be hating on the Chiefs, we're witnessing greatness because no three-peat has ever been done. And there's a potential for a three-peat to happen in 3 weeks. Just think of that. And I'll ask you, it's a big question. If Mahomes wins this Super Bowl, wins a three-peat, is he in the argument?
He should retire.
Is he in the argument for the GOAT category?
No, he's got to win 7.
Yeah,
he's got to win 7. Come back when he wins 7.
Yeah,
I mean, the fact that he's might go 3-peat is pretty impressive. But he's got to win 7 before I consider him to be a GOAT. I mean, he is a really good quarterback. He's probably the second best quarterback of all time right now. But yeah, he's got to win 7.
Yeah,
got to win 7.
Hard to beat Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I think then the AFC Championship or the Pro Bowl is the week following that, and then the Super Bowl is February 9th, in New Orleans.
All right. I think that wraps up our episode. We'll be back next week with a conference championship breakdown, some more NFL news, and thanks for sticking around. Yeah. Thanks for watching.
Peace.
power.